The human species originated in Africa, and for hundreds of thousands of years our ancestors lived there in relative peace with their cousins, the Neanderthals, until the latter went extinct some 40,000 years ago. However, modern humans didn't stay much longer after that. And today we're going to explore what would have happened if they did. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to try and answer the question, what if humans never left Africa? Let's jump back into the prehistoric past and find out. 2.9 million years ago, the first hominins, or early human relatives, appeared in Africa. Over millions of years, they slowly evolved, developing into the various Australopithecines, including the famous Lucy. However, it was around 300,000 years ago when the genus Homo appeared and eventually gave way to Homo sapiens, or modern humans, about 300,000 years ago in what is now Ethiopia. This was, of course, after many other species of the genus Homo such as the Neanderthal, the Denisovans, and the Hobbit, all of which were pretty successful in their own right and lasted tens of thousands of years. But it was the Homo sapiens who would go on to become the only surviving great ape with a world-spanning empire and an insatiable curiosity about the cosmos. But at first, life was tough for them. The world was full of predators, and places that were hospitable to humans were few and far between. And so it was that most of our early ancestors spent their lives searching for food and trying not to be food themselves. It wasn't until around 12,000 years ago that the last ice age came to an end and humanity really started to flourish. However, while this was a boon for human development, it was a bane to the development of megafauna. As temperatures rose, habitats changed and large animals like mammoths, mastodons, and giant ground sloths began to disappear from the face of the earth. Yet smaller animals like horses and cattle roamed free across the savannas and forests of Africa. These animals would soon become domesticated by humans and serve as a source of food, clothing, and transportation for our expanding population. But while these innovations allowed humans to thrive in Africa, they also carried within them the seeds of humanity's destruction. For see, humans are social creatures, constantly forming new communities, warring with old ones, and spreading across the world. And in Africa, there simply wasn't enough room for everyone. Sometime around 70,000 years ago, humans began to spread beyond the continent, first traveling east to populate the Middle East and South Asia, then north to Europe, and eventually west to the Americas. All the while, more and more people crowded the African continent. At its peak, the population reached around 10 million strong, and this posed a problem. Much like today, the majority of jobs in prehistoric times were related to food production. Hunters would kill animals and gatherers would collect fruit and plants. But unlike today, this was often done on communal lands. There was no private property yet, and everything belonged to everyone. However, this system had its limits. As the population grew, the amount of food available on communal lands remained relatively the same. This meant that more and more people had to be assigned to the task of food acquisition. And since there weren't any major technological innovations, this meant that more and more people were needed to feed the same number of people. This isn't sustainable, obviously, and so one of two things had to happen. People would have to leave or starvation would set in, and this is where our story diverges from history. In our timeline, humans began migrating out of Africa some 70,000 years ago, but in this one, they don't. So what happens next? Well, the obvious answer is starvation. With no new lands to explore and not enough resources to sustain them, the people of Africa would likely have starved to death within a few decades. But there's another possibility, one that involves a little bit of magic. In reality, somewhere around 60,000 years ago, humans underwent a sort of cognitive revolution. Language became more complex, art and jewelry became more common, and abstract thinking became more widespread. Some scientists even believe that humans developed the ability to plan for the future during this time. This revolution allowed humans to accomplish incredible things, like building boats and traveling across the ocean to new lands, discovering fire and using it to cook food and ward off predators, and developing tools and weapons made from metals like stone and bronze. But in our story, this revolution never occurs. Without the ability to use advanced tools or build complex societies, the humans of Africa would almost certainly have died out within a few generations. But let's say that our humans do develop agriculture and domesticate animals. Then what happens? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at Africa today. Today, Africa is home to over 1.4 billion people and is the second largest continent on Earth. Geologically speaking, it's one of the oldest continents and is home to some of the world's most famous landmarks, including the Nile River, the Sahara Desert, the Great Rift Valley, and Mount Kilimanjaro, the world's tallest mountain. Africa is home to a wide variety of climates, from the tropical rainforests of the Congo to the Mediterranean climate of the Maghreb region. This has allowed humans to settle down and grow crops, as well as raise livestock. In fact, Africa is thought to be the cradle of civilization, meaning that this is where agriculture and domestication first took place. In terms of its environment, Africa is home to a wide variety of wildlife. The Serengeti Plain is home to over 2 million wildebeest and 300 species of mammals, while the Amazon rainforest is home to over 2.5 million species of insects and 40,000 species of plants. However, despite its beauty, Africa is also home to some of the world's deadliest animals. The Nile crocodile is one of the largest crocodile species in the world and is responsible for over 275 attacks per year. And the African elephant is the largest land mammal in the world and can weigh up to 6 tons. So what would Africa look like if humans never left? Obviously, it would look a lot like it does today, but there would be a few key differences. First off, the population would be much larger, probably reaching over 1 billion people. This would put a strain on the environment and could lead to widespread famine and disease. Additionally, the lack of exploration and discovery outside of Africa could have led to the stagnation of technology and innovation. Finally, the absence of humans in other parts of the world could have led to the extinction of certain species that rely on humans for survival, as well as the proliferation of invasive species that might have been controlled in our timeline. Overall, it's difficult to say exactly what would have happened if humans never left Africa. However, it's safe to say that it would have been very different from the world we live in today. If you enjoyed this video, check out more content. Also, please like and subscribe if you want to help us reach our goal of 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thanks for watching.